Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I tried to do this video once and apparently the video was choppy. So I'm going to do this and just upload it. I was having a conversation about my impressions of the People's Summit. I have mixed feelings. And like I was saying in the video before, I have a certain level of bias that I'm becoming aware of. Like as I think through what I am thinking about the summit and what I'm feeling about the summit. In some measure, those things are in conflict. They're in immense conflict with one another. And they're in conflict in a way that I'm aware of it. Like, if that makes sense. Like, it's not this thing where the emotion just kind of flows through. It's, no, there's something there. There's a conflict. There's a bumping heads between how I feel about it versus what I think about it. Part of me, the emotional part of me, and the gut feeling part of me, I'm angry with the Democratic Party. Not just angry with the Democratic Party. I understand that if anything is going to take place, it's going to take place from the left. And that party is not the left. And there's a second point. We have political apparatus. We only have one political apparatus. The thing that allows you to choose who you want to represent you. Now, understand, and you need to understand something. The changeovers of power. If you notice, there's a structure to it. There's almost like a repetitiveness to it. It's almost mechanical, regardless of who the participants are. The things that the people say after the person gets elected. There's a certain legacy. The legacy is for a reason. It's, to some degree, this is political theater, but it's theater for a very specific point. Changeovers of power in that way are toppling of a government. One government is being exchanged for another government. It's not a bloody process in our case. It's a peaceful process. And they make a heavy insistence to show these two people are working together. These two people are part of us. And this is a peaceful changeover of power. That is the only apparatus we have to affect who we want in that office. If the party is going to go to such lengths to decapitate that apparatus, I mean, because ultimately what they did was make a decision of, no, I don't care what the public wants. I'm picking her. If that's the only apparatus we have to make a decision on who we want to be in that office, and the party itself is literally working and antagonistic against that process because that process in some way threatens the person who they want in that government, the ruler that they want in that government, because that is what we're talking about. Now, the Republican Party are horrible. They're goblins. They're off the spectrum in regards to political leanings. They're jihadists of sorts. These guys that are in Congress have moved so far to the right. There is nothing like it in our history, for the most part. It's amazing. It makes sense in a sense because the Democrats moved to the right, they also moved to the right, but it's insane and off the spectrum. But Donald Trump got elected. Understand what I mean. I'm making a point. They hated Donald Trump. They teased him. They joked him in the beginning. But ultimately, each one of them fell to Trump. Ultimately, the Democratic president also, or the Democratic candidate also fell to Donald Trump. They didn't rig their process, even though they hated the guy. The Democratic Party rigged their process in order to exclude one candidate that they hated because that candidate represented the classical values of their party. And not just that. The fact that that particular candidate was there, brimming with confidence and progressivism, the audience applauding him, the audience loving him, the man becomes a rock star. And you show that in comparison to whoever you have him standing beside. He decimates her in one debate after the next. And ultimately you get crowds coming out for him when they could barely fill a gymnasium for the other side. You can understand how people would have some anger that you've upset the apple cart, that you've essentially rigged the process. The only process we have for changing power in our country outside of some kind of violent revolution. So yes, I had feelings for that particular candidate, and that's not a gay thing. It's not in a gay way. That sounds bad. But there's something about somebody, and progressives will understand me on this. Maybe conservatives not so much. There's something about a guy getting up there, and he is saying things. Like, saying things that you yourself understand from a flesh to bone level. Like, you understand it in the way water is wet. That's how you understand it. In a way that a breeze on the ocean just feels amazing. It's unspoken. It doesn't need to be said. And yet you're confronted with the world with those values and those virtues are hard fought and often easily lost. And you look around and people are suffering. And again, those things in you that again, you understand almost as clean as water or as wet as water. They're still there. Meaning, this moral compass that you yourself have is hefted against the world to which we live. And of course, having the moral compass is going to rub up ragged against our world. Our world is a cesspool. So, you get somebody up there who's articulating that completely, unabashedly. He's saying those things that you yourself have in you. You resonate. You resonate heavily because you're investing a certain amount of your feelings into that particular candidate, because that candidate is in some degree representative of who you are, or at the very least the values that you yourself espouse. So it goes beyond this mechanical process we just cheated. It goes to this thing of those people felt some way for the guy. Literally felt some way for the guy. And you treated that man miserably. Absolutely miserably. Hefting his body up in front of the DNC, broken, battered, shafting Nina Turner in that same DNC thing. So you can understand people are pissed off, me being one of them. In my mind, I am willing to let your country burn and have one Republican after the next crush one Democrat after the next until those particular Democrats get the hint that until you represent your base, you will not get in office. Period. Period. I'm okay with that. I understand that Republicans are fucking horrible. But you must understand the Democratic Party, A, subverted the electoral process. B, anything that you need to get done in this country is going to come from the left, not the right. Meaning you need a vehicle. You cannot get that vehicle intact if you give that vehicle your vote and it's not doing what you need it to do. If it's not going to do anything about climate change, what does it matter if a Republican says he doesn't believe in climate change? One issue after the next, particularly when you're talking about the big issues that could end your civilization. They do nothing. They have no answers. They have nothing for it. Why are you going to pay the pizza man that never came? Or that never had, or at the very least came but didn't have a pizza? Why? Because you're scared of the other boogeyman? I would wager you would have to walk through a certain amount of fire to get the thing that you want. And ultimately, you're going to end up with this persistently leaning to the right country because cash is going to continue to subvert that process. It's one thing for cash to buy the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is a betrayal. This is an absolute betrayal. Because ultimately, that party was supposed to represent the 99%. And that party sold its soul for 10 pence of silver. Cash. They sold it for cash. And in doing so, completely decoupled the ability for the public to articulate what they want. Now, if the public can't articulate what they want through the legislative body because that particular party is beholden to cash, why are you continually giving them your vote for somebody who's not representing you? Why? That's not a fair question to ask. Why? Because you've always done it? I would make the case that the country you have, to some degree, is because you've always, quote-unquote, done it. You've always done it. That strand of brutal let it burn is there. It's real. It's absolutely real. This other side of me is, well, I met these people. Like, I met Paula Spurgeon. I met, it was a gentleman from 7th. I met Jaffe, the guy in California who's running against Pelosi. I met these people. It's like when you see them, you shake their hand, and you have a conversation with them. Paula Spurgeon was just a mom. That's it. That's how I perceived her to be. That was the image. That's everything that came across to me is she's just a mom. She cares about her community. She wants to do something about it. Where does that strand of let it burn go into dealing with her? Do you know what I mean? It's like the emotional aspect of there is I fucking hate the Democratic Party and I want that shit to burn. Ugh. That's there. That's real. Which means that no, I don't necessarily want to vote for any particular Democrat. I don't give a shit who the Democrat is. If they're a Democrat, that is a scarlet letter to me. Hands off. I shook her hand. She's running as a Democrat. And you get this feeling or you get this impression from her like, I'm just a mom who's trying to do something for my community. I did an interview with her. It's difficult to hear, but I watched her interview with Tim Black also. She seems genuine. Same thing with Jaffe. Jaffe seemed like he was a rebel. Jaffe has a little age on him. That's true. Him and I talked for a good little while, and I talked to his press secretary for a while. I mean, her and I talked for like an hour about politics and everything else, not necessarily anything in general. And I was giving her this idea like, look, you guys need to go beyond the New Deal. Like, whatever you do, you need to go beyond the New Deal. The New Deal was to save capitalism. And ultimately, if you're having this thing, try to give people a certain amount of freedom. So, yes, you're going to do solar panels. And you're going to put those solar panels on people's houses. Because that allows them to decouple themselves from an energy company. That is a measure of freedom. Now, she took that idea and was like, oh, that's not bad. I'm going to write that down. Who knows if she wrote that down? It doesn't matter. My point is, again, Jaffe seems rather genuine. But who knows? I'm reminded of this conversation with Elizabeth Warren where she was talking to Cenk Uygur. And he asked her about Ben Carson. And she said, I talked to Ben Carson. And Ben Carson seemed really impassioned about lead. Meaning he wanted to get lead out of houses. And she said, I confirmed him because he absolutely seemed genuine that that's what he was going to do. Now, she denied him in the second part because ultimately he came out as right wing can be. Essentially, all that stuff about lead was off the table. So, and I have to also take into account this is my first People's Summit. So this is my first time interacting with politicians. The thing is, they didn't feel like politicians. Not all of them. One of them did. But yes, they had their press person with them, so that's always a little weird. How can I say this? It's like that emotional part of me is like, yes, let it burn. No, I don't want to vote for any particular Democrat. By the same token, I want Joe Manchin out of his goddamn seat. I want Joe Manchin out of his seat. So if I think Paula Swearengin is just a mom, and for the most part just wants to do what's best for her community, talking about clean energy and everything else, right, revolutionizing West Virginia, and literally the argument that she made most was, those people are dying, those people are being killed, and Joe Manchin is monstrous because he's sharing the blame. I watched her have an interview with Tim Black, and most of the interview was, they're killing West Virginians. That sounds pretty progressive to me. I think about the way I see the world, and I'm like, why are we allowed to murder and kill in this way? Now, in her particular case, her focus was, they're killing West Virginians. It wasn't full-on economics. It was, they're killing West Virginians. Yes, she's talking about economics too, meaning we need to stop the things that they're doing in regards to coal in that particular environment, and we need to revolutionize West Virginia for all these other energy producers, meaning you can revolutionize that particular state. Yes, we don't necessarily want coal because it dirties the environment, but that shouldn't punish the workers who are there. Whether you're talking about education resources, whether you're talking about money over a period of time, whatever you're talking about, make those people whole in their positions. Those people fight you because ultimately you're taking their jobs, you're taking their living source. I'm saying give them another living source and give them a certain amount of money to give them over until they find that particular position. That eliminates a certain amount of resentment towards you for what you're doing. in regards to trying to eliminate coal. And in the case of Swearengin, I don't know if she will go that far with it, but ultimately her focus tended to be on those people. Yes, I support her. I support her. How I feel about it has nothing to do with it. I want Joe Manchin out that seat. And if there's a progressive candidate that's going to run against him, I want him out that seat. I want Joe Manchin out that seat. Jaffe, Nancy Pelosi, I want her out that seat. You shouldn't be able to fail that much and remain in your seat screaming out, we're capitalists! We're capitalists! Get her capitalist ass out that seat. Jaffe seemed to be fucking awesome to me. He did. I like the guy. I just like the guy. Also, there's this also secondary aspect of, I'll give you an example. Him and I were talking, and he was wearing like a fuck you button or something, and people were complaining about it. And I was like, dude, your base is essentially radicals. And he tells me, he's like, look, my base for the most part are rebels. Like, he didn't use those terms, but it was something to that effect. Like, my base, like whatever you're going to tell me as advice from a progressive standpoint, regardless of how far to the left it is, my base will be okay with it. I was like, yes. I was like, yes, that's awesome. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. And if I get the added bonus of, do you know how demoralizing it would be to the Democratic Party to get Nancy Pelosi out that seat? So you can understand to some degree my dilemma. It's this contradiction of, I don't want to vote for any of these guys. But at the same token, these two people seem genuine. And these two people are going after people who I desperately want out their seat. I want the moral victory. And you may call it braggadocious. You may even call it a sick thrill. But fair enough. I still want it. I still want it. I don't see another vehicle. I honestly don't see another vehicle. And that's my dilemma. It's not enough for me to kind of, it's like, yeah, something needs to be created. But for as much as I dislike the Democratic Party, can it be said to some degree that these aren't typical Democrats? Like, if that woman is a mom, or let me say it this way. Can it be said that you choose to vote for the specific candidate, not necessarily based on any kind of political lines or party lines? Meaning, if I see somebody who I think is progressive, regardless of her label, am I obliged to support her? And part of me wants to say yes. Part of me wants to say that ire that I'm directing at the Democratic Party to some degree is what caused her to get into that race in the first place. All of us, I would argue, are one in that particular point. She's functioning in the capacity of the Democratic Party purely because she believes that that apparatus is already there. She don't see the point in starting a new apparatus. She should be punished for that. Like, I guess that's what I'm getting at. It's like, I feel like how I feel about it is in contradiction with what I think about it. Meaning, in talking to her, I'm like, yes, I want Joe Manchin out that seat. I want the shocking thing to happen of the leader of a particular party in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, to be taken out of her seat by a progressive. That's what I want to see. I want the shock of it all. If I'm playing chess, yes, that's a badass move. So, yes, I like Swearengin. I could be wrong. I like her. I like Jaffe. I could be wrong, but I like the guy. But here's the caveat. Movements are what hold power accountable. Putting a particular politician in that office, it's not enough. It's willy-nilly. How many times are you going to get a Sanders? Who the fuck knows? It's the people themselves that hold those guys accountable. An apparatus would need to be constructed externally from the party in order to hold the party accountable. Otherwise, the party will always fall back into ridiculousness. I was talking to someone at the rally, someone who knew Sanders. And she made the point that for the most part, Sanders believes he can do it in the party, which is what we already knew. If you're getting progressives in the office, can an argument be made that a progressive is not a Democrat whether they're running under the label of Democrat or not. And if it's a candidate who you full well believe in what they're saying, meaning, yes, I think this person is being honest with me. I mean, do they get the representation at that point? Like, do they get the vote of confidence? Whatever my conflict is, or whatever that hedge is, there's an emotional push against it. While at the same token, it's still recognizing of, I like them. I like them. So, yes, I support both. I'm going to look, in fact, I'm going to hit Jaffe up for an interview. He's in California's district. And go from there. Like I said, there's this strange conflict that goes on in me on this case. I despise the Democratic Party with a passion. Now, speaking to the woman from Brand New Congress, she tried to make the argument that, well, we're not really Democrats. Well, you're running under the banner of Democrat. Don't pay attention to the label. But you're running under the banner of Democrat. Are you being co-opted? How do we know you're not being co-opted? How do we know these people aren't just saying whatever they need to say? And look, this is new to me. I could be completely wrong in my assessment of these people because I don't necessarily have any experience assessing politicians up close. I don't know. I don't have the experience of being burned by somebody who says one thing and does something else. So take all that with a grain of salt. Take all of it. But yeah, beyond of the things that I just don't know, I like Paula Spurgeon. I liked her. She literally came across as a mom to me. She was talking about the most striking thing about the conversation with her wasn't even in the conversation. They were like, yeah, the kids are upstairs in the room. she's in the middle of this campaign thing, trying to get publicity and everything else, and yet the kids are upstairs. It puts it in perspective. I guess that's my point. And you get this, you feel for the person. But again, I make the caveat that I'm new to this. In the case of upfront shaking that person's hand and then assessing the person, because let's be honest, politicians for the most part have a mask. Anybody who met Bill Clinton absolutely loved Bill Clinton. The man's charisma is supposed to be mythic. So yeah, those people can shake Bill Clinton's hand and get burned by Bill Clinton, thinking full well that whatever he's saying at the time is the thing that he's actually believing. So that's kind of point I'm getting. I don't have the experience per se to make an assessment that I can completely trust. And because I completely distrust the Democratic Party with a passion, the thing is, it seems like the people who are running also distrust the Democratic Party. And the angst of that distrust is some degree why they're running. Which is why I end up on the side of, yes, I do kind of want to support Spurgeon and Jaffe. That's where I fall in on it. I mean, that was my impression of the candidates. In regards to the summit itself was fine. It's a bunch of people in the rooms talking to themselves, and they already agree. I mean, let's be honest, that's what it is. You go into a lecture, everybody in that lecture space agrees. Before the person opens their mouth, they agrees. Now, there's some information that you get. There was information I got that I didn't know. But, you know, I still left out with this thing of, okay, now what? Now what? Now what? What do we do? What do we do? It just feels like I got to talk to Paul J from Real News, and I got to talk to Nina Turner. I told her I won't divulge the conversation, but I got to talk to Nina Turner. Because I didn't have my camera, and I was like, look, all of this is off the record. I'm not saying any of this to anybody. And I just started asking her questions. And she was nice enough to answer those questions. And she answered them honestly. Jimmy Dore, of course, I was able to ask him the question about TYT. I thought that was, when I do interviews, I ask questions that I'm interested in knowing the information to, that's not on the surface. It's like, there's something going on under the surface of this particular situation, and I want to know what that is. So that's the question I'm going to ask. I know from a human perspective, Jimmy Dore had to endure massive amounts of stress dealing with his vote for Jill Stein. Now, if you look at those clips, he's immensely testy about what takes place during the time he's leading up to the vote. That testiness, his reaction to that, to some degree amounts from the amount of push that he's getting on it. So it's not like this is just a random thing. He's behaving in a way based upon the people are behaving towards him. He's just become more testy with it. So you can see that there was a certain amount of stress that was built into the process of him making that choice to vote for Jill Stein. I'm curious about it. I'm curious about it. What happened on TYT when that took place? Because certainly something happened in TYT when that took place. I got to, like I said, talk to brand new Congress. It was decent. It was decent. I got to do several interviews. Like I said, the lectures were good. But again, the lectures were already built in that you were going to agree with them. It's not as far to the left as the left form. But it's not, I get the feeling antagonistic towards Democrats. If that makes sense. Like, so it doesn't feel like this thing of, oh, these people are just Democrats. It felt like these people in many respects are antagonistic towards the Democratic Party. Those people, when Sanders was speaking, was holding draft Sanders signs, screaming out, they cheated you. It was rigged. All this other stuff went during his speeches. Those people didn't seem like Democrats to me. Those people seemed like they immensely hated the Democratic Party. And the fact they had the draft Sanders thing means that they themselves are looking for a third party option. That was at the People's Summit. That's what was at the People's Summit. I'm pretty sure you had some Hillbots. You had some people who were less aggressive towards the party. But this was for Sanders. And ultimately, those people understand, whether Sanders wants to admit it or not, that he was cheated. Meaning those people are antagonistic towards the party that Sanders is for the most part trying to get people into. Now, he's trying to get them into it because he believes that if you get enough progressives in, you can chase out the corporates. That's the thought. That's the thought. And for him, he looks at it as, I don't want to use another apparatus because the apparatus already exists in the Democratic Party and anything else would be too much. That's how I think he sees it. That's the practical way I think he looks at it. So I'll leave it at that. The People's Summit wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people I was able to talk to. I enjoyed the interviews. I even enjoyed the experience itself. Even hanging out with Tim Black on today or earlier yesterday. It was good. It was good. I understand saying progressives is bashing it and she's going after it balls out. She goes after everything balls out. And look, I've always told you that her values are better than mine. I'm willing to compromise if it gets me some yards. Now, the catch becomes, it has to be worth it. It has to be worth it. It's not willy-nilly. It's not, people think I'm a purist, or they think, like when you're talking to Democrats, they think I'm some kind of absolutist. Like, you know, no, I would never change on this particular position. It depends on what it is. I have red lines. It's just so happened that the Democratic Party hits my red lines head on. So there can be no compromise with the party at that point. Her and I fall on the same side on this point, just by virtue of what we're talking about, what we're dealing with. In this particular case, I wanted to see it. I wanted to go. I wanted to see what was there. I didn't get this feeling of co-opt. That wasn't the vibe I got. These guys were hardcore Sanders supporters. Co-opt. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that. That's all I'll say on it. I didn't feel that. I know how she feels about it. I get it. I totally get it. Yeah, but I didn't feel that co-op vibe. I mean, yes, Sanders is a sheepdog. But those people were holding up draft Bernie signs. Those people were literally trying to pull him into another party. So whether he can get those people, and I'm going to end on this. People who were Sanders supporters didn't consider themselves Democrats. They didn't. I know Sanders is doing this thing of trying to get people back into the party, but ultimately those people didn't consider themselves Democrats. They considered themselves something else. And they looked at it as their person was Sanders. This other, that guy. I don't know these other people. I like that guy. So they went with him. When he went to the Democratic Party, not all those people followed. And if these people are holding signs saying draft Sanders, that is the opposite of co-opt. That is the opposite of co-op. Whatever Sanders' intentions are, there was a large draft Sanders contingent at that particular thing, and you had a large amount of people calling it rigged and everything else. They're antagonistic towards the Democratic Party. So it's like, it's difficult to co-opt something that hates your guts and is actively trying to destroy you from the inside out, literally hollow you out from the core with progressives. That's the feel I got from the People's Summit. And look, this can be my own bias, my own reality box of sorts. my eye going towards the things, the confirmation bias. So that's possible. But I don't think that's the case. That just didn't seem like the case to me. So I'll leave it at that. It wasn't bad. It was a good experience. It was a very good experience. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Black is fucking awesome. I got to meet him in person too. So, alright guys. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the work through Patreon.